There's a retired bodybuilder, Ronnie King Coleman, and he had a saying that everyone wants to be a bodybuilder, but no one wants to lift heavy weights. By the way, that's the clean version. So everyone wants to be a bodybuilder, or at least kind of look like one, but no one wants to lift heavy weights. While not true, because everyone doesn't want to be a bodybuilder or necessarily look like a bodybuilder, but what he said does have some credence. Many people want the look, but they don't want to do the work. Especially in recent church history, there are times when a certain ministerial position is popular, and it's like everyone wants to be a bishop, or everyone wants to be an apostle, or in this case, a prophet. It's like everyone wants to be a prophet, but they're not willing to die for what they prophesy. For example, in 2 Kings 4, there was a Shunammite woman who saw Elisha pass by, and she used to invite him into her home along with her husband. And it got to the point where she even asked her husband to build an extra room in the house to accommodate Elisha whenever he passed through town. And then there came a time when Elisha wanted to repay the woman for her kindness. And in 2 Kings 4, verses 16 through 17, it is written, "And he said, About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, Nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid." And in verse 17, "And the woman conceived and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life." To take a page out of Ronnie Coleman's book, it's like everyone wants to be a prophet when it comes to prophesying stuff like this. Now, a Shunammite woman and her husband had not had any children, and the prophet wanted to bless her. And we could debate whether he asked the Lord or not, or if he just proclaimed it and if the Lord backed him up. But she had the child. Who do want to kill a prophet who prophesies, hey, you're going to have a child? And especially if it's a child that you've wanted, and maybe given up hope on having. Which is why she was like, "Nay, my Lord, do not lie to me." So it's like everyone wants to be that kind of prophet. But even in Elisha's life, it wasn't about always prophesying about babies and marriages, for example. This kind of stuff that bring a prophet fame and followers. However, the same Elisha in 2 Kings 6, and I'm going to read from verses 1 through 14. And by the way, we need more prophets like this. But many would apply if the Lord told them, you'll prophesy marriages and babies. But this is a kind of prophets that we truly need. So again, 2 Kings 6, verses 1 through 14. "And the sons of the prophets said unto Elisha, Behold, now the place where we dwell with thee is too strait for us. Let us go, we pray thee, unto Jordan, and take thence every man a beam, and let us make a place for us, or make us a place. Let me back up. And let us make us a place there, where we may dwell. And he answered, Go ye. And one said, Be content, I pray thee, and go with thy servants. And he answered, I will go. So he went with them. And when they came to Jordan, they cut down wood. But as one was felling a beam, the axe head fell into the water, and he cried, and said, Alas, master, for it was borrowed. And the man of God said, Where fell it? And he shewed him the place. And he cut down a stick, and cast it in thither, and the iron did swim. So it was a miracle. A metal axe had gone into the water. Elisha cut down a stick, threw it in the water, and the axe head started floating. If the Lord put out a request for a prophet to do miracles, signs, and wonders, hey! But it continues. Therefore he said, take it up to thee. And he put out his hand and took it. Then the king of Syria warred against Israel, and took counsel with his servants, saying, in such and such a place shall be my camp. And the man of God sent unto the king of Israel, saying, beware that thou pass not such a place, for thither the Syrians are come down. So the king of Syria is making battle plans. The Lord alerts the prophet, and then the prophet tells the king of Israel. That's one of the ways that prophets make enemies. And the king of Israel sent to the place which the man of God told him, and warned him of, and saved himself there, not once nor twice. Oh boy. Therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing. And he called his servants and said unto them, will ye not shew me which of us is for the king of Israel? So the king of Syria is thinking, there's a spy in his camp. After all, how would the king of Israel know? And one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet that is in Israel, telleth the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber. How did Elisha know this? There are people today doing things, and I don't know. Well, actually I do know, but they get it in their minds that they can do things in secret and no one will know, as if God isn't watching, and as if God will not share those secret things, those hidden things with others. And even today, there are a lot of people, for example, coming on social media saying, God showed me this, God showed me that. But really nothing to get them in trouble. And with that, can God trust the prophets with information such as this? Can God trust the prophets with things, for example, ministers are doing in the dark while professing to serve the Lord Jesus Christ? Can God trust the prophets with things people are doing in secret, compartmentalized information facilities, skiffs? Can God trust the prophets with things leaders are doing in the situation room? Not only to trust the prophets with such information, but can he trust them to reveal those things if and or when necessary? Because when you know such things, and then you have to proclaim such things, has the Lord ever given you a prophecy? And then you start doing like Gideon, you're throwing out the fleece. Oh Lord, if this is you, let the fleece be wet and the ground be dry. Oh Lord, please don't be angry with your servant. Let the fleece be dry and the ground be wet and all kind of stuff, because you're like, I don't want to say this. Because you know when you open your mouth, the enemy's going to come. Or maybe have you ever revealed something that the Lord showed you, and then even that very night you go to sleep and the person you spoke about, you see that person in your dream, or you see a devil in your dream coming to shut you up? See, if you prophesy things that people want to hear, if you tickle their ears, you probably won't have that kind of those issues. But the prophet Elisha, yes, he prophesied about the birth of a child. One of the miracles causing this axe to float. But those kind of things usually don't get a person in trouble. Like Jesus, he got in trouble because he was doing things like healing people on the Sabbath. So even in a sense, quote unquote, church folks would become an adversary for a prophet of the Lord. So with Elisha, he was telling the king of Syria's secrets, the things that were being discussed in his bedchamber. And you know what? There are people who will read the Bible. They'll preach from it. They'll pretend as if they're ministers of Christ. And in their unrighteousness, it's like it never crosses their mind that when they're doing their evil, the Lord is exposing their works to others. And in time, he'll have others, those others, expose what they're doing in darkness. Or, like the gift of the discerning of spirits is not in operation. So no matter how they try to play the part of a Christian, the Lord will expose them for who they are to others. And the gift works in a myriad of ways as the Holy Spirit wills. For some people, it's like testing the spirits, like if the person prophesies, waiting to see if the prophecy comes to pass. But for others, they'll just know by the Spirit of God that person's of him or of God versus that person's not. So this will cause an adversarial relationship. They could also beg the question, how did this Syrian, presumed Syrian, one of his servants, know that it was Elisha who was telling the king's business? And not that that's the case, but we see like in 1 Samuel 6, where the diviners of the Philistines told the people of Philistia that they need to return the ark of God. Not to be like the Egyptians who hardened their hearts against God, but to return the ark of God because that's why they're having issues in the country. Or even with Pharaoh, when Aaron and Moses were representing the Lord, doing miracles in his name, telling the Pharaoh to let the Lord's children go. Moses would call for a plague. For the first 3 plagues, like the Bible tells us about Jannes and Jambres, the sorcerers in Egypt, they're replicating the plagues. But after a while, even they said, this is the hand of God. So those in the kingdom of darkness, they can recognize those who are truly representing the Lord. So we don't know how this person knew, but this person knew, and was accurate, that Elisha, the prophet of the Lord, was telling his business to the king of Israel. Stuff that was going on in his bedchambers. How did he know? See, the devil is not omnipresent, but the Lord is. Nothing is hidden from the Lord. The Lord knows our thoughts, even our thoughts when they're far off. So before we even have a thought, the Lord knows about it. Do you think this excludes the devil? That there's nothing the devil can think of that God doesn't know what he's going to think before he thinks? That's the power of God. But many people overlook this. Jesus in Luke 12, 47-48 said, to whom much is given, much is required. So if you want to be a prophet, do you really want to be a prophet? As I said that, I'm writing for the book the Lord had me write. So you want to be a prophet? Are you crazy? Being a prophet has consequences. Because when you say certain things or do certain things, you're going to attract the attention of the enemy. And you're going to find out what Jesus meant when he said the thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But even trying to kill you should not deter you from doing the works of the Lord. Sir Ronnie Coleman saying everyone wants to be a bodybuilder, but no one wants to lift heavy weights. A lot of people want to be prophets, but are they willing to prophesy for the things for which they may die? Continuing verses 13 and 14. And he said, go and spy where he is. So as a prophet, you're going to have the enemy on your case, watching you. The same way you had people following Jesus' ministry, just to try to catch something coming out of his mouth so that they could accuse him. They were trying to kill Jesus. So again, and he said, go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, behold, he is in Dothan. Therefore sent he thither horses and chariots, and a great host. And they came by night and compassed the city about. And the stuff about coming by night, same thing. Prophets may get visitations. Sometimes witches will astrally project into the presence of a prophet. And especially when they think they can't be seen or discerned. Now there's more to the story, but I'll leave it right there. So Elisha, prophesying babies, great. The axe head floating, great. But when he started telling the secrets of the Syrian king, the things he was discussing in his bedchamber, then he became an adversary. So it's like the focus of the king of Syria wasn't just simply Israel or the king of Israel. Now it was Elisha. And he sent his men after Elisha. So are you willing to die for the Lord may have you prophesy? Do you truly want to be a prophet? And I have several examples to go through. In the book of Isaiah, in verse 38, in those days was Hezekiah sick unto death. And Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, came unto him and said unto him, thus saith the Lord. If a person is sick and you're going to prophesy that the person is going to recover, who wouldn't want that kind of prophecy? But that's not why the Lord sent the prophet Isaiah. Set thine house in order, for thou shalt die, and not live. Set thine house in order, for thou shalt die, and not live. And even today, there's some quote-unquote schools of prophets, or prophetic schools, where people are told only prophesy good things. Prophesy positive things. That is not how prophecy works. It is written that prophecy of old was not by will of men, but holy men of God spoke as removed by the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit may speak life, like with the Shunammite woman, or he may speak death, like with Hezekiah. And also in these days, for a prophet to go to a king to say anything, it could mean the prophet's life. Even for an Israelite to prophesy to an Israelite king, it could mean the end of the prophet's ministry. Then Hezekiah turned his face toward the wall and prayed unto the Lord, and said, remember now, O Lord, I beseech thee, how I have walked before thee in truth, and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. What is happening here is actually good news, because the king is actually humbling himself and repenting before the Lord. That is not the response of every king who received a prophecy. Then came the word of the Lord to Isaiah, saying, go and say to Hezekiah, thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will add unto thy days 15 years. The cause of part being a prophet is being willing to prophesy quote unquote good or bad. A part of Joseph's test prior to his ascension to become the governor was when he was in prison for Joseph to tell the cupbearer that in 3 days the Pharaoh was going to restore him to his position. And then to tell the chief baker that in 3 days the Pharaoh was going to execute him. Prophetic ministry is a blend of both. Not always positive stuff that'll get a person accolades and well received. It's also sometimes why prophets don't have a lot of friends, because one moment it's good stuff, and another moment that same prophet may be rebuking those he or she were with or partnered with at some point in time. Going to look at the next prophet, Jonah. Now we all know, at least presumably, that the Lord called Jonah to go to Nineveh to preach, to tell them in 40 days the city was going to be destroyed. But rather than going to the east, to Nineveh, Jonah fled by ship, trying to go to Tarshish. And the Lord sent a storm after him that was going to break up the ship. So being a prophet, your quote-unquote free will is not as free as other people's. It's like some people disobey God and it's like there's no immediate consequence. But for a prophet, if the Lord lets you go, then arguably he doesn't love you, because the Lord rebukes and chastens those whom he loves. He allowed Jonah to get to a point, to get on the ship, to get comfortable, to fall asleep. But then the Lord is going to wake him up. The Lord sent a storm. The Lord was changing the circumstances to affect Jonah's free will. In fact, a lot of people overlook this part. In Jonah chapter 2, I'll read verses 1 and 2. Then Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish's belly, and said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice. Jonah was going through hell because he disobeyed the Lord. So for some, I'll just say ministry gifts. It's like you may hear some people say, oh, the Lord told me to do this, and they haven't done it. Either yet or at all. But for a prophet, it's like the leash is shorter. But pick up in Jonah 3. And the word of the Lord came unto Jonah the second time. This was after the fish or the whale spat him out back on dry land. Came unto him a second time, saying, Arise, go unto Nineveh, that great city, and preach unto it the preaching that I bid thee. So the same stuff the Lord had told him before that he tried to get out of was now what the Lord is telling him to go do again. So Jonah arose. Notice the obedience. In Hebrews 5:8, speaking about Jesus, that even though a son, he learned obedience through the things which he suffered. Prophets, through suffering, learn obedience. So Jonah arose and went unto Nineveh, according to the word of the Lord. As I said, that I'm reminded of Ezekiel 3 and also chapter 33, where the Lord called and later renewed Ezekiel's calling as a watchman. And a part of that, the Lord told him that if he gave him a message to warn people and he didn't warn people and they perished in their sins, that those people who perished, that their blood would be on the prophet's hands. But if you warn them and they fail to repent, then their own blood would be on their own hands. And under such a mandate, there are things a prophet will do because they don't want anyone else's blood on their hands, and it will cause them to become unpopular, especially as a watchman. Another book the Lord had me write was about the watchman, about seeing in the dark. And the thing about that, watchmen have a tendency to be the most negative type of prophet. Because if something is good is coming, there's really no need to warn people. Watchmen typically warn of negative things that are coming, and people don't usually want to hear those things. So continuing. So Jonah arose and went unto Nineveh. Just one second. Went unto Nineveh, according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceeding great city of 3 days' journey. And Jonah began to enter into the city a day's journey, and he cried and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. Oh, by the way, there's also another thing about prophetic ministry. Jonah was an Israelite. Nineveh was in Assyria. The Assyrians and Israelites were adversarial. When Jesus had the encounter with the Samaritan woman at the well, or the Samaritan woman at the well had the encounter with Jesus, the Samaritan, a mixture of Jews and Assyrians as a result of the conquest. So for Jonah to go to Nineveh, to go into enemy territory to prophesy, oh boy. So for the prophet to go into enemy territory to prophesy, that could be like a death assignment. So the people of Nineveh believed God. Let me back up. And Jonah began to enter into the city a day's journey, and he cried and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. So he wasn't coming with good news. He was coming with word of destruction, a word of judgment from the Lord. So the people of Nineveh believed God, which is good. Even though according to this, it doesn't say that Jonah said, Thus saith the Lord. He just simply said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. And proclaimed a fast, and put on sackcloth from the greatest of them to the least of them. At least this is great. Rather than trying to hang Jonah by his tongue, they're actually repenting. For word came unto the king of Nineveh, and he arose from his throne, and he laid his robe from him. Oh, I mentioned about Moses and Aaron earlier. In Exodus 3 through 4, when the Lord called Moses to go to Egypt to prophesy, to tell the Pharaoh to let the Lord's children go. That wasn't an easy thing. Now, one of the things for Moses is that because he had slain an Egyptian and he fled from Egypt 40 years prior, he was afraid to go back to Egypt because there's basically a warrant out for his arrest. But the Lord, in part of preparation for the mission, let him know that those who sought his life had passed away. But Moses still had his fears, to include who was he to go prophesy, to go speak on behalf of the Lord, to argue with the most powerful man on the face of the earth at the time, the Pharaoh of Egypt. So the king arose from his throne, and he laid his robe from him and covered him with sackcloth and sat in ashes. And he caused it to be proclaimed and published through Nineveh by the decree of the king and his nobles, saying, Let neither man nor beast, herd nor flock taste anything. Let them not feed nor drink water. But let man and beast be covered with sackcloth and cry mightily unto God. Yea, let them turn every one from his evil way and from the violence that is in their hands. Who can tell if God will turn and repent and turn away from his fierce anger, that we perish not? And God saw their works, that they turned from their evil way, and God repented of the evil that he had said that he would do unto them, and he did it not. At least not at the point in time. Now when you read the book of Nahum, Nineveh was destroyed. Later on the city went back to its wickedness, and the city was destroyed. So for Jonah, an Israelite, to go tell people in a foreign nation, an adversarial one, that in 40 days their city would be destroyed, it was not an easy task. One which Jonah tried to run from, but the Lord would not have it. Again, I have several examples. In another one, in 1 Kings 13. In 1 Kings 13, I'll just read from verses 1 through 4. However, there's more to this story. I'll let you know in a second. And behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel, and Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. And he cried against the altar in the word of the Lord, and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name. So we see another prophet prophesying the birth of a child. Usually that kind of stuff doesn't get you in trouble. Of course, when it's from the Lord. And upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense upon thee. Okay, he just crossed the line. When he was prophesying the birth of a child, it's like, hey, great. But now it's talking about Josiah by name. And upon thee shall he offer the priest of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. Okay, the prophet crossed the line. He should just kept it at a child should be born, Josiah by name. And if he had ended there. And it says, and he gave a sign the same day, saying, This is the sign which the Lord hath spoken. Behold, the altar shall be rent, and the ashes that are upon it shall be poured out. And it came to pass, when King Jeroboam heard the saying of the man of God, which he cried against the altar in Bethel. What do you think the king was going to do? That he put forth his hand from the altar, saying, Lay hold on him. This was not good news. I almost did a message about, and it's going to be called something to the effect of silencing of the lambs, where the enemy is trying to shut up children of God. Of course, prophets are also children of God. Lay hold on him. There are certain things the enemy does not want to hear. And more importantly, there are certain things the enemy does not want people to hear. And he will try to shut up the messengers. So when the Lord raises up messengers through the furnace of affliction or the refiner's fire, it will be such that nothing will deter them from speaking what thus saith the Lord, no matter what the enemy tries. Because a prophet of the Lord must be willing to die for what he or she prophesies. So lay hold on him, and his hand which he put forth against him dried up, so that he could not pull it in again to him. It doesn't always happen that way, where someone tries to put a hand on a prophet and something happens to the person. Sometimes the individual does get to accost a prophet. In Hebrews 11, which is referred to as the Hall of Fame of Faith, it spoke about people being sawed asunder. I've heard it said that when Isaiah was killed, they used a saw to cut him in half. And while sawing him, they tried to get him to recant his prophecies, but he would not. He was willing to die for what he prophesied. This is that serious. And people, ultimately the devil, will try to silence you for what you prophesied. Will even try to get you to recant what you said in the name of the Lord. And if you're not convinced, not only convinced, if you fear the devil more than you fear the Lord, you are in trouble. Now the story continues where the king the king asked the prophet to pray for him, and his hand was restored. And the king offered to bring the prophet home, but the prophet said he couldn't stay, eat, or drink, in accordance with the word of the Lord. Not sure if Jeroboam still wouldn't try to kill him, but he left. And when the prophet left, there was another prophet who was in Bethel, heard about this man of God from Judah, and he tracked him down. And then he lied to the prophet. He lied to the prophet, saying an angel of the Lord had told him to return with him and that he could eat and drink, which was contrary to the word of the Lord. A prophet has to be submitted to God, to where the prophet knows that God has said something, that if someone else comes and try to contradict what God has said, the prophet will not do it. The Judean prophet ended up dying because he trusted in the prophet from Bethel instead of the word of the Lord. Prophetic ministry is serious business. It is the Lord's business. So again, if you had just prophesied, a child will be born, Josiah by name, like, okay. When you start talking about the altar and sacrificing, putting the bones of the priest on this, like, whoa, crossing the line. And in the Bible, a lot of times you hear about a king following the ways of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. Speaking about that man right there. In 1 Kings 11, the prophet Ahijah had prophesied to Jeroboam by removing his outer garment, his new outer garment, ripping it in 12 pieces, and giving him 10 pieces representing the 10 northern tribes of Israel. Because the Lord is going to take the kingdom from Solomon, at least in Rehoboam's time, Solomon's son. And Jeroboam, even though the Lord had given him 10 northern tribes, he got insecure, and he repeated the sin that Aaron did with the golden calf in the wilderness. But he built 2 and had people start worshiping those golden idols. So he started leading Israel into idolatry. That's why in the Bible you see most of the king of the 10 northern tribes were evil, and the kings of Judah were more redeemable. For example, Ahab, king of Israel, evil. Jehoshaphat, king of Judah. He had his issues, but he was much more righteous in the sight of the Lord than Ahab. And from there, we go to Ezekiel chapter 8. And this is a chapter that makes it absolutely confounding that any person would pretend as if he or she is serving the Lord and do evil under the cover of darkness or under any kind of cover, and thinking it's a cover that the Lord cannot see through, because even the blackest of darkness is as day unto the Lord. It's like he has the best night vision goggles there are. In Ezekiel, the entirety of chapter 8. And it came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I sat in mine house, and the elders of Judah sat before me, that the hand of the Lord God fell there upon me. Then I beheld, and lo, a likeness of the appearance of fire, from the appearance of his loins even downward, fire, and from his loins even upward, as the appearance of brightness, the color of amber. And he put forth the form of an hand, and he took me by a lock of mine head. And the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven, and brought me in visions, two visions of God, to Jerusalem. Ezekiel was a prophet who was in captivity in Babylon. To the door of inner gate, that looketh toward the north, where was a seat of the image of jealousy, which provoketh to jealousy. Even the valley of dry bones, Ezekiel 37. There are people who engage in astral projection, also called soul travel. But it's something that is demonic. It is initiated by the person, or if the person is partnered with the devil, then a devil may initiate it. But in this case, it was God who was showing the prophet things in the spiritual realm. Soul travel or astral projection is a counterfeit of experiences such as this, where people will leave one area and go to another. Sometimes it's to spy on a person, to cast curses on a person or a region, to attack people while they're asleep, etc., etc. But this one right here is of God and initiated by him. It is not something the prophet was doing at will. The Lord is doing it. Continue verse 4. And behold, the glory of the Lord God of Israel was there, according to the vision that I saw in the plain. Then he said unto me, Son of man, lift up thine eyes now, the way toward the north. So I lifted up mine eyes, the way toward the north, and behold, northward at the gate of the altar, this image of jealousy in the entry. He said furthermore unto me, Son of man, seest thou what they do? Even the great abominations that the house of Israel committeth here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary. But turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations. So when people are doing their evil as if no one knows, and even sometimes they may be doing things against a person or a group, and the person or group that they're doing it against cannot see. But while they're doing that stuff, and the person or persons they're attacking are oblivious to those things, the Lord may have one or more persons from all over the world seeing this individual or group engaging in these things, and they may not know it. The devil cannot hide anything from God, but God can hide things from the devil. Oh boy. Picking on verse 7. And he brought me to the door of the court, and when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. Then he said unto me, Son of man, dig now in the wall. And when I digged in the wall, behold, a door. And he said unto me, Go in, and behold, the wicked abominations that they do here. So I went in and saw, and behold, every form of creeping things, and abominable beast, and all the idols of the house of Israel, portrayed upon the wall round about. And there stood before them 70 men of the ancients of the house of Israel. And in the midst of them stood Jaazaniah the son of Shaphan, with every man his censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense went up. Some incense were to the Lord. You can even say even today. And some incense are offered up to devils, like Santeria with their burning of candles. Then said he unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark? So again, this stuff is being done in the dark, but it's being exposed. Jesus spoke about the things that people do about shouting from the rooftops. Things that have been done in dark would be made manifest by the light. Ephesians 5:11, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but expose them, reprove them, And it's even a shame regarding the things that people do in the dark. So when people think they're hiding stuff from God, and when Judgment Day comes, and the books of their life is opened up, and they're being judged for every... So even people who deny that they've been engaging in evil stuff, on Judgment Day, all their works being put out for all creation to hear. So again, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients of the house of Israel do in the dark, every man in the chambers of his imagery? For they say, the Lord seeth us not. People are entertaining such thoughts today, that they're doing things that the Lord cannot see. Maybe they get some incantation that they think that if they recite those incantations, that no one would be able to discern what they're doing. For they say, the Lord seeth us not. The Lord hath forsaken the earth. He said also unto me, turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations that they do. The Lord in Matthew 23 spoke about greater condemnation. I've heard some testimonies, to include recently, about hell. And what I've been hearing people say is that they've seen people suffer in hell the things that they did to others here on earth. So these greater abominations, some people suffer worse than others because of the evil they did on earth. So in Obadiah 1:15, as you have done, so shall be done unto you. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house. Oh no, not the Lord's house, which was toward the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz, another god, lowercase g-o-d. Then he said unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Yet turn thee again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than these. Now imagine, you are in a church. The pastor is respected all over the world. And then one day, in a dream or vision, the Lord shows you what the pastor is doing behind closed doors or in the dark. And then God tells a pastor to give you the mic and allow you to speak on a Sunday. And the pastor has no idea what you're going to say. But the Lord compels a pastor to give you the mic to address the church. But you're not sure what the Lord wants you to say. And you seek the Lord. And the Lord tells you, what I've shown you, reveal it to the entire church. Would you be willing for such an assignment? I've oftentimes said, the prophets have to be willing to walk into a building, but be ready to get thrown out. And that includes a church. Unless God restrains a pastor and the ushers, armor bearers, how long do you think you get the opportunity to speak, to reveal those things the Lord revealed unto you? And by the way, in a circumstance such as that, the Lord would ensure that He makes it clear to you that that experience was of Him and not of the devil. He would confirm His words to you so that you know that you know. And sometimes again you may be like Gideon. Say, oh Lord, if this is you, you want to do this. If you want me to rebuke this pastor or whosoever, I need for you to do this. And then when those things line up, you'd be like, oh gosh, it is the word of the Lord, and I must say it. So these things about greater abominations. And one of the things that makes something a great abomination is when it comes from someone who should know better but doesn't do better. And he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs turned toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, and they worshipped the sun toward the east. Not the sun like capital S-O-N, the Lord Jesus Christ. They're worshiping the sun, worshiping creation as opposed to the Creator. Then he said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah that they commit the abominations which they commit there? For they have filled the land with violence, and have returned to provoke me to anger, and, lo, they put the branch to their nose. With Jonah, he didn't want to go to Nineveh. Has the Lord ever revealed something to you that you're like, oh my gosh, I pray he never asked me to release this? Or has he ever told you to do something and you're like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to, but because I fear God I must? And you know that when you do it, there's going to come backlash. It's going to be like the king of Syria sending his men after Elisha. Therefore will I also deal in fury. Mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in mine ears with a loud voice, yet I will not hear them. Meaning judgment is coming. It's also similar to Jeremiah 7, 11, and 14, where the Lord told the prophet, do not pray, lift up intercession for these people, because I will not hear you. Judgment had come. So there are times people talk about, God showed me this and God showed me that. Is God showing them anything that if they reveal it, the forces of hell would come against them? And it's not to say that God cannot protect you, but sometimes also question how much protection is going to give you under circumstances. Because some prophets died for what they prophesied. In Mark 6, reading from verses 16 through 28. But when Herod heard thereof, he said, It is John whom I beheaded. He is risen from the dead. Why was John beheaded? Wasn't all he was doing was just baptizing people? And yeah, telling them to repent, but mostly just baptizing people. Continuing, for Herod himself had sent forth and laid hold upon John and bound him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. What kind of ought did Herodias have with John the Baptist? For John had said unto Herod, It is not lawful for thee to have thy brother's wife. So in this case, it wasn't even just the king, it was the king's wife. And because John opened his mouth to dare to speak up that what he had done was unlawful, he had become an enemy to the king and his wife. Therefore, Herodias had a quarrel against him and would have killed him, but she could not. Herodias is reminiscent of Queen Athaliah, 2 Kings 11, and Jezebel. For Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just man and an holy, and observed him. And when he heard him, he did many things and heard him gladly. And when a convenient day was come, that Herod, on his birthday, made a supper to his lords, high captains, and chief estates of Galilee. And when the daughter of the said Herodias came in, and danced, and pleased Herod, and them that sat with him, the king said unto the damsel, Ask of me whatsoever thou wilt, and I will give it thee. And he sware unto her, Whatsoever thou shalt ask of me, I'll give it thee, unto the half of my kingdom. What's she going to ask for? 1,000,000 shekels of silver? What's she going to ask for half the kingdom? And she went forth and said unto her mother, What shall I ask? And she said, The head of John the Baptist. Because John the Baptist dared to speak out against what they're doing and that it was wrong. They had an issue with that. You think people are not going to have an issue today if you dare to speak the truth? And she came straightway with haste unto the king, and asked, saying, I will that thou give me by and by in a charger the head of John the Baptist. That's kind of, young lady, are you for real? You're going to appease your mother because she wants the head of John the Baptist? In a sense, literally something that after a short time is going to rot and stink and will be of no use. You want the head because you're appeasing your mother when you had the opportunity to get, quote unquote, half the kingdom. I'm just saying, but, oh gosh. And the king was exceeding sorry, yet for his oath's sake, and for their sakes which sat with him, he would not reject her. And immediately the king sent an executioner, and commanded his head be brought. And he went and beheaded him in the prison, and brought his head in a chamber, and gave it to the damsel, and the damsel gave it to her mother. John the Baptist died because he dared to tell the truth, that it was unlawful for King Herod to marry Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. Prophesying about babies, doing certain miracles, you will get fans, you will get followers. But daring to speak the truth, you will create enemies. And just like then, even today, they will seek your life. Going back to 1 Kings, this time to someone I just mentioned. In 1 Kings 18, I was reading from verses 1 through 4. And it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go, shew thyself unto Ahab, and I'll send rain upon the earth. Oh, by the way, by the word of the Lord, Elijah had prophesied that it would not rain or dew until he gave the word. So that word caused a drought. And this was 3.5 years later. Prophesying certain things, where it's good, people receive it. But prophesying something like a drought, that's kind of stuff that creates enemies. And Elisha went to shew himself unto Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. And Ahab called Obadiah, which was the governor of his house. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. For it was so, when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water. Arguably, for every prophet of the Lord, there's going to be a Jezebel of Satan. It could be a man or woman assigned from the kingdom of darkness to try to bring that person down. Now, continuing this, Elijah challenged Jezebel's prophets to show the Israelites that Yahweh was the true and living God. He had those prophets executed after successfully demonstrating that Yahweh was the Most High God. But then, in 1 Kings 19 verses 1 and 2, it is written, "And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal, how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah." So we see Herodias having an influence on King Herod, resulting in the death of John the Baptist. And beforehand, now we see Jezebel. What is she going to say to Elijah? Was this a thank you note saying, "Thank you for convincing me that Yahweh is the Most High God, and that I'll renounce Baal and I'll serve Yahweh and Him only"? Well, let's see. So again, then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, "So let the gods do to me." Okay, this is not sounding good. "So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time." So Jezebel had made a sport, if you will, of killing the Lord's prophets. When 450 of her prophets were killed, and despite the demonstration that Yahweh was the Most High God, she was not amused. Not for Jezebel's wrath. And it's kind of like with narcissism, where you may have heard the term narcissistic injury, where when a narcissist is confronted that rather than repenting, they decide to retaliate. So kind of like Jezebel. And picking up verse 3. "And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life." Jezebel was serious. Again, she had a track record of killing the Lord's prophets. "And came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there." I'm of the belief that Jezebel offered some of the Lord's prophets the opportunity to either serve her and her God or die. And it kind of seems as if some may have capitulated. When you do what Jezebel wants you to do, you get to eat at her table. But when you don't, she'll try to put her foot on your neck. And not just put her foot on your neck, but to remove your head from your body. Because either you serve her or she wants you dead. And one of the reasons why it seems as if some of the Lord's prophets may have defected out of fear, which is not a good thing, is in 1 Kings 22. And I'll read from verses 1 all the way down to 28. "And they continued 3 years without war between Syria and Israel. And it came to pass in the 3rd year that Jehoshaphat the king of Judah came down to the king of Israel. And the king of Israel said unto his servants, Know ye that Ramoth Gilead is ours, and we be still, and take it not out of the hand of the king of Syria? And he said unto Jehoshaphat, Wilt thou go with me to battle to Ramoth Gilead? And Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, I am as thou art, my people as thy people, my horses as thy horses. And Jehoshaphat said unto the king, Inquire, I pray thee, at the word of the Lord today. Then the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, about 400 men, and said unto them, Shall I go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall I forbear? And they said, Go up, For the Lord shall deliver it into the hand of the king. Notice they said the Lord. They didn't say Baal. They're saying Yahweh shall deliver it. But why would they say Yahweh shall deliver it? But they're among the prophets who ate at Jezebel's table. See the conflict of interest? And Jezebel wants you to compromise your relationship with the Lord for the sake of safety with her, to avoid her wrath. Now get this. And Jehoshaphat said, Is there not here a prophet of the Lord besides, that we might inquire of him? Sounds of those prophets were saying, Yahweh will deliver Ramoth Gilead into your hands. But Jehoshaphat, discerning, is like, hold up, isn't there a prophet of the Lord we can inquire of? In a sense, not just prophets who the Lord called, but prophets who the Lord called and they're still in submission to him, because there's a difference. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, There is yet one man, Micaiah the son of Imlah, by whom we may inquire of the Lord. But I hate him. Why would the king hate him? Is it kind of like when Paul said to the Galatians, Am I therefore now your enemy because I tell you the truth? The truth is offensive, and those who hate the truth will hate you. Jesus spoke about they hate you because they hated me first. So when they're telling God's truth, because nowadays people have this saying about my truth, your truth, their truth, his truth, her truth. How about the truth? So he said, But I hate him, for he doth not prophesy good concerning me, but evil. But Ahab, you're evil. What do you expect? And Jehoshaphat said, Let not the king say so. Then the king of Israel called an officer and said, Hasten hither Micaiah the son of Imlah. And the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat the king of Judah sat each on his throne, having put on their robes, in a void place in the entrance of the gate of Samaria, and all the prophets prophesied before them. By the way, what is a false prophet? Is there a biblical definition for a false prophet? If there is a biblical definition for a false prophet, feel free to drop it in the comments below. Because sometimes I hear people say things, because like in the Bible, like Jesus in Matthew 7 warned about false prophets and spoke about by their fruits you will know them. But how is a false prophet truly defined? So all the prophets prophesied before them. And it doesn't say all the false prophets, just all the prophets. Because another thing, what is a prophet? And ultimately, a prophet is a spokesperson for a deity. The prophet either speaks on behalf of Yahweh, the Most High God, or another God. And all the prophets prophesied before them. And Zedekiah the son of Shaanah made him horns of iron, and he said, Thus saith the Lord, thus saith Yahweh, With these shalt thou push the Syrians until thou have consumed them. Later on in Jeremiah 28, by the way, the Bible also refers to Hananiah in that chapter as a prophet. It doesn't say he's a false prophet. So again, does the Bible have a definition for what a false prophet is? So he's doing this prophetic gesture, kind of like Jeremiah with his confrontation in Hananiah in Jeremiah 28. And continuing, and all the prophets prophesied so, saying, Go up to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the king's hand. This is also a trick of the enemy. When people who are in the same camp are prophesying the same thing, saying it's from the Lord, and even though, and they could come at you one at a time and two at a time, but they're all from the same camp. They're all from Jezebel's camp. And what they're saying, it may seem as if you're getting confirmation, but the confirmation is not coming from God. It's that basic confirmation is coming from Jezebel. But they're saying, Yahweh shall deliver it into the king's hand. They're not using another God's name. Well, by the way, was it Isaiah 42, I think also 44? The Lord said that there's only one God. He is the God. There is no other. He searched all creation all the way through, and there's no other God but him. And the messenger, not to be confused with the Trinity, what we call the Holy Trinity, but no God but him. And the messenger that was gone to call Micaiah spake unto him, saying, Behold now, the words of the prophet or prophets declare unto the king with one mouth. Let thy word, I pray thee, be like the word of one of them, and speak that which is good. This is also another thing that can get a prophet in trouble today, where it's like everyone else is prophesying one thing, but you prophesy something else. And there are times when people are afraid to speak up, because what they say they're receiving from the Lord is different from what everyone else is prophesying. And sometimes we're in the position, you can break a spirit of deception that's going around. When others hear something, and if they're truly of God, then they'll seek him to find out if what this person is saying is accurate, and if they are in some way in error. And Micaiah said, As the Lord liveth, what the Lord saith unto me, that will I speak. That is one way to avoid deception, by not speaking what everyone else is speaking, but speaking what the Lord tells you. So he came to the king, and the king said unto him, Micaiah, shall we go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall we forbear? And he answered, Go and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the hand of the king. Sarcasm. And the king said unto him, How many times shall I adjure thee, that thou tell me nothing but that which is true in the name of the Lord? That's how, really? King Ahab, you really want the truth? Okay. And he said, I saw all Israel scattered upon the hills, as sheep that have not a shepherd. And the Lord said, These have no master. Let them return every man to his house in peace. The king asked for it. He got the truth. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, Did I not tell thee that he would prophesy no good concerning me, but evil? Come on, Ahab, you said you wanted the truth. And he said, Hear thou therefore the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the hosts of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, Who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said, by the way, fall isn't just like trip and fall. It's like, oh, nah. Who shall persuade Ahab that he may go and fall, other words, die at Ramoth Gilead? So the other prophets are telling him, oh, go, you be successful. They have Ahab telling him, you're going to die. Are you willing to die for what you prophesy? And one said on this manner, and another said on that manner. And there came forth a spirit and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. And the Lord said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I'll go forth, and I'll be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, Thou shalt persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth and do so. So a spirit was going to be a lying spirit in the mouth of Ahab's prophets. That's why they all in Jezebel's camp were telling Ahab and also Jehoshaphat, go and you'll be successful at Ramoth Gilead. None of them were telling the kings, this is a death trap. By the way, from the Lord for Ahab. In part because of the wickedness that had been perpetrated against the Lord. In 1 Kings 16, it speaks about Ahab walking in the way of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, the one I mentioned from 1 Kings 11 and 13. And also that he was evil, but he got worse after marrying Jezebel. Picking up verse 23. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee. So the Lord doesn't always have good things to say about people. But Zedekiah the son of Chenaanah went near and smote Micaiah on the cheek, again trying to shut the mouth of the prophets, and said, which way went the Spirit of the Lord from me to speak unto thee? Oh, this was the Zedekiah, like back in verse 11, and Zedekiah the son of Chenaanah made him horns of iron, and he said, thus saith the Lord, with these shalt thou push the Syrians until thou have consumed them. So Zedekiah has an issue with Micaiah prophesying something differently. And he's trying to shut the mouth of the prophet of the Lord. And Micaiah said, behold, thou shalt see in that day, when thou shalt go into an inner chamber to hide thyself. See 2 Kings 10, and you see why. And the king of Israel said, take Micaiah and carry him back unto Amon the governor of the city, and to Joash the king's son, and say, thus saith the king, put this fellow in prison. Didn't Ahab, wasn't he the one who called for Micaiah to prophesy to him? And he adjured him to tell the truth? And now he's saying put him in prison? For speaking the truth? Oh, by the way, sometimes people want to debate if a prophecy was true or not, if it was from the Lord or not. And they're trying to shut it down, but when the word of the Lord goes forth, and not only goes forth from a prophet, but it goes forth from the mouth of the Lord. Because in Isaiah 55, the Lord said his words will not return unto him void. So the moment those words leaves the Lord's mouth, they will not return unto him void. Even if the prophet does not proclaim it here on the earth. It's already been proclaimed from heaven. So again, put this fellow in prison and feed him with the bread of affliction and with the water of affliction until I come in peace. So Ahab was essentially challenging the word of God. And Micaiah said, if thou return at all in peace, the Lord hath not spoken by me. And he said, hearken, O people, every one of you. When you speak the word of the Lord, if people don't believe, just give it time. In Jeremiah 28, he said, you'll know the prophet whom the Lord has sent when the word of the prophet comes to pass. By the way, even Jeremiah didn't say, if the word of the Lord doesn't come to pass, the person's a false prophet. He said, you know the prophet whom the Lord has sent. Because some prophets are actually of the Lord, but they did things that the Lord didn't send them to do. And they're in error. So that when the word of the Lord comes to pass, you'll know that it's a prophet the Lord had sent. In 2 Samuel, after Absalom's death, there were two runners. The first wanted to go deliver a message to David. But Joab said it wasn't his time or his place. And Joab sent another messenger to tell David that Absalom had been killed. But the first runner still wanted to go, and Joab allowed him. He left afterwards, but he ended up reaching David first. But he had no message. So it's possible for a prophet of the Lord to not have the word of the Lord for a particular situation. And it's best to keep quiet. Not say anything at all. So sometimes prophets speak when the Lord hasn't commanded them to speak, which is also another thing. The Lord is not just about giving a revelation, but commanding that person to speak. Then comes in Deuteronomy 18:20 through 22. And again, when the prophet says something in the name of the Lord, if it doesn't come to pass or follow through, that is something the Lord has not spoken, because the Lord watches over his words. So Micaiah, if thou return at all in peace, it's like you won't return in peace. You may return in pieces. And he said the Lord hasn't spoken. So it's like, just wait and see. And you'll know if the Lord spoke to me or these 400 others. Time is a great revealer. But sometimes people are trying to buy time to conceal stuff. But eventually, all the works of evil will be made manifest by the light. The other day I did a video. I don't mean to harp on it, but like the big thing about Rev. Zacharias, he was held in such high esteem while here on earth. But after he died, things came out. The late Bishop Eddie Long, there are things he was accused of. But even in death, stuff came up. So even death will not save a person's reputation. If you're in a position and the Lord gives you the opportunity to repent, do so and do so quickly. Because you can go down to the grave thinking that no one's going to find out. But death will not save you from the Lord exposing the things you did while on earth. And what I mentioned earlier about testimonies of people seeing others in hell. There's some people, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in hell and the Lord will show or give a dream or a vision or even an experience so others will see the person in hell, so they'll know so and so died, didn't repent when the Lord gave him or her opportunity to do so, and this person is now in hell suffering the consequence of his or her actions because trying to save his or her reputation was more important than repenting and having some kind of character with the Lord. So Micaiah said, if thou return at all in peace, the Lord hath not spoken by me. Time will let you know who is a prophet the Lord has sent. So for honoring the king's request, showing up to prophesy, Micaiah ended up in prison for telling the truth. There's some people say that the Lord doesn't have prophets today. He doesn't need prophets today because we have the word of God. And there is something very troubling about that because there's an event that has not come yet. And in order to get around that about the Lord doesn't need prophets because of what's written in Hebrews 1. And I want to divert what's written in Hebrews 1 to make it seem as if the Lord doesn't need prophets because we have the word of God. That is false. Even though we have the word of God, still need prophets. Just like under the old covenant, there were scriptures. And yet there are times the Lord will send a prophet to prophesy to people, to give them direction for that time. Jehoshaphat wanted to go to battle. The Lord sent a prophet to give him a strategy. Was it 2 Chronicles 20? To give him a strategy for the battle, having the worshipers up ahead. There are scriptures with Hezekiah, but the Lord sent a prophet to tell him to get his house in order. So even though there are scriptures, the Lord even used angels to prophesy. When Mary found out that she was going to give birth to the Messiah, well, conceive and give birth to the Messiah, it wasn't that she was reading from the book of Isaiah when she found out. The Lord sent an angel to tell her. When Joseph was going to quietly divorce her, the Lord spoke to him in a dream and told him, do not be afraid to take Mary as thy wife, because the child she's carrying is of the Holy Spirit. It wasn't that he was reading the scriptures. The Lord spoke to him in a dream. That's Matthew 1. In Matthew 2, twice the Lord told Joseph, via an angel of the Lord in a dream, to take his family to Egypt, because Herod had sought the child's life. And then the Lord told him it was safe to bring the child back. which was a fulfillment of what Hosea 11 verse 1, out of Egypt I called my son. So it wasn't like he was reading the scriptures, the book of Hosea, and he saw this, out of Egypt I've called my son. Oh, it's time for me to go home. Prophets were necessary then, even though they were scriptures. The same thing today. Even what I mentioned earlier, with Elisha telling the king of Israel what the Syrian king was doing in his bedchambers, the battle plans. Those kind of things are still needed today. There's a place for prophets. But also one of the things, sometimes people are so limited in their vision, in their ideology or theology, that they think, for example, that prophets only have a place in the church and everything is geared towards the church. But let me show you, in a sense, better than I can tell you. In Revelation 11, and this is something that has not happened yet, and I'll read from verses 1 through 10. And there was given me a rod, or reed like unto a rod. And the angel stood, saying, Rise, measure the temple of God and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. I pause for a second. Another reason why prophets are needed today. There are things in the Bible, things that haven't unfolded yet. And a place for prophets is when things come, or before they come up, is to be able to say that what you're seeing, or what you're about to see, is what is written or was foretold in the Bible. To be able to say, this is that. Continuing. And I'll give power unto my two witnesses. Power for what? And they shall prophesy. Does this mean they're going to be reading the Bible? And they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. So 3.5 years. These are the 2 olive trees, from Zechariah 4, 2 olive trees and 2 candlesticks, standing before the God of the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth, and devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must be killed. He must in this manner be killed. As I said that, there are times the Lord had me speak about the rise of New Testament prophets with an Old Testament mindset. Such as this: if anyone touches them, they'll be killed. And when you look in 2 Kings 1, King Ahaziah was sick unto the point of death. And he sent his men to inquire of the God of Ekron. And Elijah told them to go back and ask the king if there is not God in Israel for him to inquire of. King Ahaziah sent a captain with 50 men to go arrest Elijah. Again, when prophets say things, it will cause people to rise up in opposition. Sometimes people with great power. If a prophet today were to prophesy certain things about some nation's leaders, security services from those countries would start monitoring that prophet and even arrest that prophet. Because some prophecies from the Lord could be seen like a threat against that leader. But it's not the prophet threatening the leader. It's the prophet proclaiming the word of the Lord, which may be judgment. In Jeremiah 28, the Lord told Jeremiah to tell Hananiah that he was going to remove him from the face of the earth before the end of the year. 2 months later, Hananiah was dead for teaching rebellion against the Lord. Are there leaders of nations today who are teaching and leading nations into rebellion against the Lord? But those who are in prophetic assignments prophets or people not want today. So back to Revelation 11. So these prophets prophesying things and people won't like. It says, these have power to shut up heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy. So kind of like what I mentioned earlier regarding Elijah. And have power over waters to turn them to blood. So like Moses. And to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. That could be considered new covenant prophets with old covenant authority. And they shall have finished their testimony. When you read Revelation 19 verse 10, it says the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Shall finish their testimony. The beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them. Prophecy will cause the forces of hell to engage the prophet, and shall overcome them and kill them. These prophets are willing to die for what they will prophesy. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritual is called Sodom in Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. And they of the people, and kindreds and tongues and nations, shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. Are you willing to prophesy something where the enemy will want to make an example out of you? An example out of you to send a message to others. If you do what this person does, you will get what this person got. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry. So people don't want the truth. And shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwell on the earth. In 2 Thessalonians 2, it speaks about people who basically hate the lies, or hate the truth. They love lies. But these prophets, people will rejoice when they're silenced. I was going to stop right there, but I'll read down to verse 12. And after 3 days and a half, the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet. And great fear fell upon them which saw them. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. So ultimately, when you're a prophet, the Lord has your back. And even if he allows you to die, you're still in his hand. So even if he allows you to die, do not be afraid to prophesy. What thus saith the Lord. Forwarding to Revelation 18, I'll read from verses 1 through 4 and then 18 through 24. And I invite you, with all the things that I just kind of skimmed over, if you want to do some additional study, is to read the entire passage, the entire chapter for greater context. And sometimes require reading the chapter before or after, several chapters. So in Revelation 18, 1 through 4. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils. Also, what is this angel doing? Prophesying. There's still a place for prophecy, and persons, whether human beings or angels, who will prophesy. Second, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hole of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye share, or that ye... Again, we see more prophetic utterance. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. There's still a place in this world for prophecy. If you don't believe it now, you're going to see later. And verses 18 through 24. And cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust upon their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her coastline or costliness. For in 1 hour she is made desolate, prophesying judgment. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. So nothing. Vengeance is the Lord's, and he will avenge. So if he allows something to happen to you, he's going to take vengeance. You may have a persecutor who may come to repentance. Great. But for those who don't repent, the Lord will render vengeance upon them. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall the great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of the harpers and musicians, and of pipers and trumpeters, shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be. There's a craft called witchcraft. Oh boy. Shall be found any more in thee, and the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of a candle shall no more at all be at all. And the light of a candle shall no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth. For by thy sorceries all the nations deceived. So again, a type of craft is witchcraft, and they'll be cut off. For by their sorceries were all nations deceived. And by the way, one of the most basic forms of sorcery, witchcraft, is simply lying. Simply lying. And like when it comes to politicians, they're renowned for lying. There are times in the Bible where people lied, and the Lord even blessed them. In Exodus 1, the Lord had mercy on the 2 midwives that spared the Hebrew children. Oh boy. And there are other examples also. But if people just lie for no, you say no quote unquote good reason. And in verse 24, and in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. I didn't have this marked, but it's also tied to in Revelation 12 verse 11, where it is written, and they overcame him, meaning the devil, by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. A prophet cannot afford to love his or her life unto the death. Be faithful to the Lord, no matter what, even to the very end. And in one more scripture, we're going to try to silence the prophets. In Jeremiah 20, verses 1 through 10. It is written, Now Pashur the son of Immer the priest, who was also chief governor in the house of the Lord, heard that Jeremiah prophesied these things. What says that Pashur, the son of Immer, the priest, who was also chief governor, heard that Jeremiah prophesied these things. So it should be good with Jeremiah's prophecies. Then Pashur smote Jeremiah the prophet, and put him in the stocks that were in the high gate of Benjamin, which was by the house of the Lord. Did Jeremiah falsely prophesy? Well, by the way, this wouldn't be the first or the last time that Jeremiah got arrested for simply prophesying. There's nothing new under the sun. They will also try to use laws or legal system to try to shut the mouths of the prophets. And it came to pass on the morrow that Pashur brought forth Jeremiah out of the stocks. Then said Jeremiah unto him, The Lord hath not called thy name Pashur, but Magor Missabib. For thus saith the Lord. Okay, he prophesied and ended up getting thrown into jail. And then he's coming out with a word of the Lord. And then he's saying the Lord hasn't called him Pashur. Well, oh gosh. Behold, I'll make thee a terror to thyself, and to all thy friends, and they shall fall by the sword of their enemies. And thine eyes shall behold it, and I will give all Judah into the hand of the king of Babylon. This is not sounding good. This is not the kind of prophecy that gets a prophet to win a popularity contest. And he shall carry them captive into Babylon, and shall slay them with the sword. Moreover, as if he hasn't said enough to get enough trouble, I will deliver all the strength of the city, and all the labors thereof, and all the precious things thereof, and all the treasures of the kings of Judah will I give into the hand of their enemies, which shall spoil them, and take them, and carry them to Babylon. This is not pleasant stuff. Kind of like also what Jeremiah said in Jeremiah 27. Jeremiah 29. And thou, Pashur, and all that dwell in thine house shall go into captivity. Oh boy. And thou shalt come to Babylon, and there thou shalt die, and shalt be buried there, thou and all thy friends to whom thou hast prophesied lies. The Lord had me do a message a while back about when prophets are prophesying different things about the same thing. And it's not like they're filling in different pieces of the puzzle. But especially when one side is saying that person is lying and the other side is saying that person is lying. And it's like, hold up. You can't be from God and each side is saying the other is lying. Either one or both sides is lying. And God is going to sort it out. So for sure, he had prophesied lies. And in prophesying lies, he didn't want people to hear what Jeremiah, the prophet of the Lord, was saying. Kind of like Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah. He had prophesied lies along with other 400 prophets. Or 399. Lord, this is verse 7. O Lord, thou hast deceived me, and I was deceived. Thou art stronger than I, and hast prevailed. I'm in derision daily. Everyone mocketh me. So if as a prophet you get mocked, you're in good company. For since I spake, I cried out. I cried violence and spoil, because the word of the Lord was made a reproach unto me, and a derision daily. Then I said, I'll not make mention of him, nor speak any more in his name. But his word was in mine heart as a burning fire shut up in my bones, and I was weary of forbearing, and I could not stay. For I heard the defaming of many, fear on every side. Report, say they, and we will report it. All my familiars watched for my halting, saying, peradventure he will be enticed, and we shall prevail against him, and we shall take our revenge on him. Let me read verse 11 also. But the Lord is with me, as a mighty, terrible one. Therefore my persecutors shall stumble, and they shall not prevail. They shall be greatly ashamed, for they shall not prosper. Their everlasting confusion shall not be forgotten. Oh gosh. While reading this, another scripture was brought to my attention, and in fact, if I wasn't going to say it, when I looked in the little corner, there's a little note pointing to the same scripture that came to my mind. And I think this will in fact be the closing scripture for this message. In Jeremiah 1, when the Lord called Jeremiah as a prophet. In verse 10, the Lord called him as a prophet to the nations, and he said, "See, I have this day set thee over nations and over kingdoms, to root out, and to pull down, and to destroy, and to throw down, to build, and to plant." The words rooting out, tearing down, destroying, not things people want to hear. And then from verses 17 through 19, "Thou therefore gird up thy loins and arise, and speak unto them all that I command thee. Be not dismayed at their faces, lest I confound thee before them. For, behold, I have made thee this day a defenced city, and an iron pillar, and brazen walls against the whole land, against the kings of Judah, against the princes thereof, against the priests thereof, and against the people of the land." Hold up. Jeremiah being against the kings of Judah, against the princes, against the priests, and against the people of the land. Prophets are in an adversarial position. And in verse 19, "And they shall fight against thee, but they shall not prevail against thee. For I am with thee, saith the Lord, to deliver thee." It is easy to be a popular prophet because you prophesy what people want to hear. They want to hear about babies, marriages, light stuff, pleasant stuff. But few people want to hear about get your house in order because you will die. Few people want to hear the Lord has seen your witchcrafts and he's going to cut you and your witchcrafts off from the face of the earth. Few people want to prophesy and then have all kind of manner of evil show up in their house, show up in their dreams or visions. The enemy is trying to torment them into silence, trying to get them to recant prophecies from the Lord. But who do you fear? Human beings, evil spirits, or God? As I mentioned about Ronnie Coleman, the now retired former Mr. Olympia, who said that everyone wants to be a bodybuilder, but no one wants to lift heavy weights. Again, that's a clean version. Many people want to be prophets until it's time to really prophesy, for which they may end up dying. Are you willing to die? For the Lord may have you prophesy. And again, in accordance with Revelation 19, verse 10, the testament of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Prophecy is not limited to a church. Prophecy may include telling the secret things people do in the dark, to include the nations of leaders. And when you prophesy those things, you become an enemy of the state. Yet you'll be a friend of God. Well, the choice is yours. And like Elijah said to the people, choose which God you will serve. And like Joshua said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. In all things, remember, Jesus Christ, He's the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings.